But my name is Carolyn Ray. As I said, I'm the editor and CEO of JourneyWoman. On today's call, we are obviously talking about cybersecurity, and our focus is going to be looking at international travel. And what we've done on this call, which is a little different from the last call, is we're going to present you with some common scenarios that might happen to you when you're traveling. Our goal here is to empower you. It's not to scare you. We want you to feel empowered. So Paige is going to take you through some of these situations. And I'd love to know, out of curiosity, there's a little button you can hit on your screen, reactions. Has anyone had a hack or a fraud or anything like this happen to them? If so, raise your hand, or even know somebody that this might have happened to. Because the statistics tell us that 1 in 5 people are, and particularly older people, are targeted for these kinds of things. So, so this is why we're doing this, and we'll talk more about that in just a moment. So Paige is going to do a presentation. As I said, you don't need to take notes, as we're going to share with you all that information. Anything she mentions, we're going to share that with you as well. And we also have a few articles on our site with everything. So there'll be lots of places for you to go afterwards. So just try to enjoy everything she's going to share with you. And then we'll take questions at the end and have some discussion. And of course, you know, safety has always been important to us as solo travelers here at JourneyWoman. I don't know if I showed this the last time, but this is a little booklet that Evelyn Hannon wrote for the Canadian government, called Her Own Way, which was published, I think, in 2016. And believe it or not, it's still mostly intact on the Canadian government site. So that's how long we've been talking about safety, since 1994. Today, we're talking about cyber safety. So we're going into the digital world with Paige Hanson. This is Paige's second webinar with us, and we're so happy to have her with us and so lucky to have her with us. She is an expert on consumer and digital safety, and a certified identity theft risk management specialist with a certificate in identity leadership from the University of Texas at Austin, with over 15 years of experience in identity management. Her resume is incredible. And Paige, we're so happy that you're here with us. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but you've worked with the FBI, you've worked with law enforcement, you work with different agencies, and she's really an expert in this area. And I'm so glad that she's with us here today. So thank you, Paige, again. And you're on mute. So I'm going to turn it over to Paige.
Thank you. And Carolyn, I think you did a really good job as far as like saying why this matters, but I do want to reiterate the fact that knowledge is power, and we do not want to make this a fear-based, but knowing what scams that are happening and understanding, okay, this is my scenario. You know, we talk about 3 scenarios, and it might not fit your exact scenario that has happened to you in the past, or when it's going to happen to a T, but then you'll understand, okay, these are the steps that I can take. And then you're better prepared if it does happen. And of course,
Exactly.
we want to give you a number of tips to help kind of make it so you're not in that situation in the first place. But the fact of the matter is, 1 in 5 older adults are victims of cybersecurity or a breach or an identity theft incident. So it's going to happen to a handful of us here on the call. So let's be prepared. And that is why I'm so thrilled to be here today. And what we're doing is we're focusing on the road. So when you are traveling, let's walk through those 3 different scenarios. Also weave in some tips as well. But then I also want to cover some current scams, because some of them are not new, but you may have heard them. Maybe you've gotten them, or they're within your social circle, you've gotten them. But more and more, we're hearing about artificial intelligence. You've probably seen it in the news. AI, I'll just refer to it as AI moving forward. But AI, as magical as it is, because there are some really cool things AI can do, there's kind of a dark side. We call it kind of like the AI apocalypse, where it's going to help these fraudsters go from broken English phishing emails to perfectly crafted, targeted emails. So I want to talk about those too, to make you more aware about how good these emails and these scams are going to get. I want to leave you with resources, whether you are in Canada or in the United States. There's different resources that you can use, at least to start, and then we'll allow much time for Q&A at the end. So let's just dive into our first scenario. Now, this is you have used public Wi-Fi or charged your phone at a public charging station. And now you're getting emails that indicate your banking information and other accounts have been compromised. You can use your reaction button. Has anybody gotten these emails that says something's wrong with your bank? You need to immediately change your password. I think I've seen some people nod. They've gotten these before. So what do we do next? Because in this scenario, we are in public. We've used public Wi-Fi, which is usually unsecure. I'll walk through those steps, how to make it more secure here shortly. Or you've charged your phone in a public charging station, that USB, you've stuck it. That USB, you've stuck that inside the station, inside the charging station versus using the actual wall plug. So these are ways that you can make yourself vulnerable to your device. It could be compromised. So our first step that we want to do is change our passwords. Not all 100 passwords that you have online accounts. Focus on changing the passwords to the accounts that you're getting quote unquote notifications from. So if it's your bank, go on your bank website, change your password. If it's the credit card company or a different account, that's a good way to start, is to change those passwords. You also want to contact your bank or other financial institution that says that there's something wrong. And you don't want to use the website or phone number that's given to you in the email. The fraudsters want you to do that. They want you to kind of make it easy and click on that. Instead, you want to go into your wallet, look on the back of your card, look at either use your app on your phone or call the number directly on your card. Any other number could potentially be fraud and lead you to kind of a more vulnerability. You want to avoid public Wi-Fi. And when we talk about Wi-Fi, you're going to eventually need to connect online, eventually within your trip. So there's good, better, and best ways to be online. So I like to present this as, okay, the good is public Wi-Fi. You have to connect, but you really only want to go to websites that don't require usernames and passwords. So we don't want you logging into your email, logging into your bank accounts. Just check the weather. Check, maps because you need to go somewhere you're not familiar with. Those are things that aren't requiring a username and passwords. Instead of public Wi-Fi, kind of the better way to do this is using your mobile data or hotspot. And this is something you just have to plan for when you're traveling, that you will be using your mobile data. Yes, it is cheaper and usually easier to jump on public Wi-Fi, but if you plan for using your mobile data or using the hotspot feature on your phone, this is going to make your personal information more safe because it's not just any Wi-Fi that you're connecting to that you're transmitting your personal information. And really the best way to go about this is to use what's called a virtual private network. You may have heard about this before. So it's often referred to as a VPN. And what it does is it encrypts all of the traffic that is going from your device to the website. So all of that is jumbled. So in public Wi-Fi, it's essentially like someone's looking over your shoulder. When you're using a VPN, then nobody can see what exactly, if you are on your financial institution's website, if you're on a hotel website, you can't see it. Now, a VPN is usually something that's either built into your device, like Apple has a feature where you can turn on the VPN, or you can buy it separately. So we recommend, my former employer was Norton. So they have a VPN option where you can add that. And it's like a $10 a month sort of fee. But there are a number, like NordVPN is another one that are great. And they will, it's just like an extra subscription that you would purchase. But we do recommend that for encrypting all of that traffic. Now, in the scenario we gave, either we're on public Wi-Fi or you used a charging station. Now, what we recommend is to use the AC power outlet. So that's going to be this, where you connect it into the wall, or you can use a portable charger. So you probably have one of these. Some of them are bigger. I got this as a freebie at my last company, but use this instead of finding some random USB at the airport or a charging station, because oftentimes those have malware in them, or that's a way that they get into your device. So we want to make sure that you're bringing all of your cables with you, your own chargers, all of that, just bring it with you. So you're not using someone else's or a public access to one, because that's what fraudsters consider low-hanging fruit. And you're in need, you need charged. Low-hanging fruit. They offer this free charging service, but sometimes it does have consequences because it's malware. Now, along with your online accounts, so you've called your bank, you've changed your passwords, we also want to add what's called two-factor authentication, or you might have heard it referred to as multi-factor authentication. So for short, 2FA or MFA. Either way, it's multiple factors of authentication to get into your account. If I had your username and password and I could just get into your account, that would be really scary. There wasn't any validation that it was you, because I have your username and password, and you likely use that same username and password on other accounts. I'm able to basically get into all of your accounts. Well, when you enable two-factor authentication, what it does, it says, okay, you put your username and password in, but now I'm going to text you a code. I'm going to make sure it's actually you, because that is what's going to verify that you have your device and it's actually you versus someone else trying to access your codes. So this is what it might look like. You can do a text message, so an SMS-based one. So this is my PayPal one. I log into PayPal. It sends me a text message. I have to give that code, and then I'm able to access my PayPal. Or you can use third-party apps. I actually just set this up recently with my new job. I set up what's called Google Authenticator. That's the one on the left. The other one is called Duo. They're both free services. I chose Google just because a lot of my accounts are Google. But what I do is I just go into my app. It has you go through the steps. And now instead of getting a text message, I go to my app and I give it that code. Either way, it's just a second layer to help those accounts that if somebody were to get your username and password, they wouldn't instantly be able to get into that account. It can seem really overwhelming because you have probably hundreds of accounts. So what I like to suggest is just prioritizing, 4 different types of emails, and then start adding two-factor authentication when you go to other websites. So for instance, email is super important because email is your correspondence that's you do with all the people that you know and the businesses that you know. So if somebody were to get into your email, they could easily impersonate you and usually get whatever they need, whether it's money or gift cards. So we definitely want it on your email, your social media accounts, your bank,
Hello.
credit cards. Did you guys have a question? And then also your healthcare accounts. Then when you go on Amazon.com and then add it when you finally go there, or Target, or wherever, versus trying to do all of them at the same time. You can also add verbal passcodes to some accounts. Like this is my LifeLock account. I just do a screenshot here. I had a verbal passcode on there and I just logged into my LifeLock account and it added. Not all email or not all accounts are going to let you do this. I personally liked it because when I called in, what was it? I was mortified. It was like my 401k and they asked for my email address and how long I've been at my job. I mean, anybody could look on my LinkedIn and see how long I've been at my job. And so the fact that that was the only verification, I was like, okay, I'm going to add a verbal passcode, and I felt much better. So those are scenarios you can do that as well if you'd like another layer of authentication. We talked about changing your passwords, but what do we do with all of those passwords we have? And we'd be recommending a password manager. And this avoids password reuse. So if somebody were to get a hold of your username and password, if you only use it at one website, it's not as powerful to the fraudster. Instead, if you use a password manager, it's able to generate unique and complex passwords for all your different accounts. Now, I've listed some reputable password managers. This is not an all-inclusive list. but they are reputable password managers, and it's a place to start and see if they're for you. Some are free, some are paid. So you really just want to use the best one for you. I'm going to pause there because that was our first scenario. You know, some of you are taking notes, which I love. Okay. Well, let's go to our second scenario. So the first scenario was, you know, we were vulnerable because we connected to public Wi-Fi. We were vulnerable because we used a public charging station. But now what happens when you used your credit card and suddenly you received an alert that your spending threshold has been exceeded? You have no credit left on your credit card and no access to money. I mean, this sounds terrible. No access to money. So what's next? One, you have to contact the credit card company immediately, or financial institution that you're getting this alert from. You also, if you haven't already, you can add what's called account threshold notifications. And what this is so I have them on my credit cards, and I have my threshold notification set as $100. Anything over $100, I will get a notification. I also have, I get text messages if my purchase is online. And I've also asked for international transactions. So I want to, in the real time, I want to know when these transactions are happening. And this is in your account settings in each of your your whether you're using your debit or credit card, these are in your account settings. So this is something you set up, and then you decide what your threshold is. If you're more comfortable with a higher threshold, great. If you want to know about every single transaction, that's fine too. I've heard people do that as well. And then, of course, you want to monitor your accounts. So after you contact the credit card company, hopefully that can clear it up right away. And so then you have access to money. But then you do want to continue to monitor your accounts just in case there is other fraud that happens. So how did it happen, though? How did your credit card get compromised? Well, you could have been a victim of a skimming. You may have heard of skimming devices. So I have a few to show you. Some of them are on the screen. So this right here is a skimming device. It looks kind of like maybe something they would make hotel key cards with. But this device is used to duplicate and make credit cards. There's also smaller devices. So you hand your card over to a waiter or waitress. Maybe your card's out of your possession for a little bit of time. All they have to do is run your card through these, and they're able to then steal your credit card information. I know some of, you have a PIN code on it, or maybe it has RFID on it. What they're reading is that track data on the back of your card, that black strip. That's what they're holding. And no, I am not a fraudster. In my past life, I taught law enforcement. So we had these for our demonstrations. We did tons of demos. So it's for educational purposes. I have these, except after 10 p.m. Then I become an identity thief. No, just kidding. I think. And then we got to talk about, kind of the good, better, and best ways to pay. The good is the credit card. Use a credit card. I would not recommend a debit card. I actually leave my debit card at home when I travel. There's other ways to get cash advancements on your credit card and so on. I just, for me, I'm just super vulnerable. That's my bank and my money. I don't feel comfortable with that. But the better way to pay is the RFID card. So the RFID, that's kind of like the tap pay. You've probably done that with your credit card, where there's the point of sale terminal and you just tap your card on it. That's better because it's more encrypted than swiping your card. But really the best way to pay is using your mobile device and using mobile payment, because not only does it require, for me, I have to use my Face ID to get on my phone. When I double click, then I hold, and it's also getting another Face ID, and it is an encrypted transaction. So if you haven't set that up on your phone, I recommend it. It's almost double encrypted way to pay, and it would be something to consider. You can also use the Wise app. A Wise app can be either on a card or an app. And this is a really good way to pay internationally because it has different currencies on your account, and you can easily transfer them on this app. So I know it's something that Carolyn uses quite a bit as well. So that usually is a really good way to pay when you're traveling internationally. Just some extra tips: avoid ATMs. That's where a lot of times these skimmers are. They're in ATMs, just like, This one's that it was in a gas station pump. This is a actual somebody's a fraudster put this in a gas station pump. I got this from our Arizona Department of Weights and Measures. They gave this to me for training purposes. So yeah, it's very popular in gas stations and ATMs. You want to make sure you're keeping your receipt, because identity theft victims are treated as if they are guilty and they have to prove themselves innocent. So receipts really help when you have them, if you have to dispute anything. And then use a credit card with travel benefits. Any card with travel benefits is going to be way better than something that doesn't. So I would look into your terms and conditions and the benefits that you get from your credit card. So that's scenario 2. That's kind of involving our payment, not having access, and so on. So our third scenario is you receive a phishing email from your hotel and other local suppliers, but you're not sure they're authentic. And you think they're a phishing because they're kind of too good to be true. And it's kind of weird because, yeah, you booked your hotel, but how do all of these other local suppliers go on a boat trip, go on a walk, go on a guided tour? How do they have your personal information? Just seems a little fishy, more than a little fishy, a lot fishy. So the first things we have to remember is that we do not want to click on any links of any email that we do not know who it's coming from. If it's from your kid, great. If it's from somebody, a friend, okay. But when it's somebody you don't know, that's suspicious, and you don't want to click on that, because in the event you do, usually it's going to install some sort of malware onto your device, and then your device is now compromised. We want to add and make sure that you have two-factor authentication. So we talked about this in that first scenario, is making sure two-factor authentication is on your accounts. You also want to keep your personal information private. We'll talk about oversharing here on the next slide, but sharing all of your with the person next to you as you're flying somewhere, your personal details, where you're staying, what you're doing, all of that stuff seems innocent. You're being very kind, personable, having engaging conversation, but you just never know where that's going to go. So kind of keep it maybe not as specific, even though it's hard not to, because you want to make genuine connections with people. But we do want to make sure that personal information is private. You can also use an email filter. So I know in my Gmail, there's a filter. I can filter what I think is spam, or you can up your level. That's in the security section of your email. Typically, it's a filter that you can raise that it might be or won't be spam. And then use a strong password. So we talked about a password manager, how that's going to help you create unique and strong passwords. So having those strong passwords will make it so if somebody did send you a phishing email and you clicked on the link and you accidentally gave your username and password, then at least that's one unique password that was given versus and used for one website versus the same username and password for every website. Now, and part of this scenario is the oversharing part. So, some of you at the beginning, you're talking about these amazing travels that you're going to have, and it's really hard not to share that excitement with your social media group. And maybe a smaller group is okay, but we really encourage latergram and really posting about your trip once you get back home versus when you're traveling. And if you do decide to post when you travel, let's make it so it's not in real time. So when you are in a monument and you're so excited about it, maybe post 2 days later that you were there versus in real time, or a picture in front of your hotel. And so that way, people aren't knowing exactly where you are in real time in case there is someone tracking all of that. Part of what will help is that you want to make your social media accounts private versus public. Now, the difference is if your profile is public, that means I can see where you post, when you post, what you're wearing, who your family is. I mean, the list goes on and on. It depends on how much you share on social media. And that can be accessed by anyone who has the same social media platform. But by making your account private, and a third bullet, knowing and managing your friends, meaning you don't accept everyone who sends you a friend request, that is going to make your social circle that much smaller and that much more manageable. So you can decide from like a risk assessment, is it low risk or high risk if I share this information? But you certainly don't want anybody who clicks on your profile to be able to see that you're traveling, where you're going, who your family is, and so on. So that's our 3 scenarios. I hope that was helpful. Has that happened to anybody? Any of those scenarios happened to anyone that you want to share, or a bit of it?
Paige, would you
Yes.
like me to share my SBA?
Yeah. Yeah. You know what? Actually, Arlene, I'm going to save that to the resources section, because I would love you to help me out on that one, because there's a part in there that you have participated in quite heavily.
Okay, sure.
Thank you.
Paige, there are a few questions here in the chat
Yeah.
that I'll just read out from the three. When using a VPN at public location, must you be on a Wi-Fi network first?
Yes, you do. And so this is where you can, and it is safer if you join public Wi-Fi, but then you accompany that with a VPN. That's okay. That's safe. So, and that would be recommended. The only way to really do anything on public Wi-Fi is to use a VPN. So yes, you want to be on your VPN.
Right. Lori was asking, what if the swipe is the only option they want you to use? I guess at a gas station or.
Yeah. And that's
else.
okay. Just know your risks. So you know that, you've seen these skimmers, you know that they can happen, but what can we do to help combat that? And that's to add those account threshold notifications. And so that my recommendation would be to add the account threshold notifications. So in real time, that fraud is happening and it's likely from that swipe.
Paige, I have something different that I haven't talked to you about.
Oh, what's up?
My sister, not to me, but my sister was at you said not to go to an ATM, and this is a definite, do not use ATMs. My sister, a number of years ago, was at an ATM, didn't realize that there was a young man standing close to her, behind her, and saw the numbers that she plugged in, and their bank account was totally drained.
Oh, that's devastating. That's devastating. Did she end up getting the money back?
She did, and they did, but it was still an extraordinarily devastating, horrific experience.
Yes, I agree. That's terrible. Thank you, Juan, for sharing. And I will, and you bring up an excellent point. So then the number one, if you have to use the ATM, doesn't matter if you're traveling or at your local bank, but you want to take your hand where you're doing your PIN code and cover your hand. You might think it's silly. There's no one around, Paige. Why am I covering it? Believe it or not, there's, little pinhole cameras and there's things like that. And ATMs are a gold mine for fraudsters, because that is instant access to cash. And that's what they want. They want instant access to cash. So it doesn't matter if you're in your local, credit union or bank, you want to cover your hand. And it seems so basic, but that is just one of the small tips that'll help kind of alleviate or reduce your vulnerability from someone seeing your PIN code.
And that's what I learned from her terrible experience. And thereafter, when I did use an ATM, I always covered the numbers that I was plugging in with my hand. Now I just don't use ATMs.
I know. I always just get like $40 back, cash back when I'm at the grocery store. So I can't tell you the last time I use an ATM. It sounds so funny, but
I just want to mention, Paige, something you said on the last call, which was the screen protectors for phones. And I have a large one here I use on my computer when I travel, but I thought that was a really good tip too, that you can put these screens on your phones so that someone who's around you cannot see your screen.
Yes, that's an excellent tip.
Where do you get those?
You can, Amazon is what
Yep.
Isn't that the solve for anything?
Right. So Carolyn, you have a big one for your computer, but you would be able to get a small one for your phone, right?
There are small ones too. Yeah, I'll put the link up. We shared that. We mentioned it in the last one, so I'll put that link back up again too. Just a couple other questions here. How secure are text messages?
Depends on what country you're in. So I mean, I I wouldn't divide, like share any evil plans that you're doing. And if you watch any of the Datelines, they're able, even the text messages you delete, they still can have access and get those electronic records. So you want to just conduct text messages as if somebody is looking over your shoulder. So I would not be putting in, texting somebody your driver's license, or texting somebody your passport, your passwords, things like that. That all is stuff that is, you just have to assess your risk. So I really avoid sharing personal information, social security numbers, anything like that in a text message.
Okay. And Marilee is asking about VPNs.
Yeah.
I'm just going to put a link in here that with some VPN recommendations.
Great. Thank you. I think Michelle asked you, how do you get cash when you're traveling? Carolyn, what do you normally do?
I hardly ever use cash anymore because you can tap.
Yeah.
But I look for a reputable bank, and not the ATMs that are kind of standing out in the middle of nowhere. I always go to an actual bank building versus, but usually small amounts.
Yeah. Yep. Because most places are going to take tap, card, mobile payment, physical credit cards. I mean, with the exception of maybe like a train or a bus. So unless that's your way to avoid credit card fraud, but then that leans into other personal safety issues when you're traveling with that many.
Well, this is why I think Wise is so great, because you can do all that tapping and any purchasing of tickets, train tickets, whatever, with the app on your phone, and not have to worry about your other credit cards. And I have a Wise card as well as a Wise app, and I've got very low limits on those. So, and also with Wise, when the money's gone, it's gone. So if you don't have enough money loaded into your app in whatever currency you're in, there's no more money. So
and then
that's kind of the end of the conversation.
Yeah. The fraudsters are like, okay, next. I don't want their $2 or two. So
I haven't traveled in a number of years since pre-COVID. And I always used to take the currency of, usually I'm going to France, so I take the euros and then my credit card. So is that still acceptable? I don't have Wise. I don't even know what that is. It's the first time I'm hearing of it. So is that still acceptable today? Because my credit card doesn't have the tap. It just has, you slide it in or you slide it across.
I mean, it's worth looking into, Arlene, is with your credit card, usually they will give you a tap option. But is your question is, can I bring a credit card and can I bring cash? You definitely still can. Absolutely. There's just other more encrypted and safer ways to pay. So you're not carrying a bunch of cash or having just your credit card. Another tip is you want to make sure you have at least two credit cards, multiple cards. Because if one was to get compromised, like in our second scenario, then you might not have access to anything. So it sounds like you do that already. So that's good.
Do that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about AI.
Yes. Okay. And again, I'm reiterating, knowledge is power. I will give hugs, but I don't need anybody scared from what I'm about to share. We definitely just want to be aware of the things that are happening. So, with the rise of AI-powered cyber attacks, it's really become a major concern for businesses and individuals because they're just getting so good. So I'll first share some of the current scams, and then I'll talk about AI after that. So smishing is SMS. A text message is called SMS. And so smishing, that's where it gets its name from. I'm going to give you 5 different examples, and maybe you've received this. And I don't know what it is about text message, but text message usually seems to be more credible. You think, oh, they're texting me. It's more credible than a phishing email that I'm aware of, or a voicemail that I might get from a fraudster. But in fact, they are using text messages. This one that I got says, that my Wells Fargo bank account has been locked. Well, this is a fear-based message. This fraudster wants me to react. You'll notice there's a handy dandy blue link in this message. They want you to easily access that account. If I were to click on that link, this is fraud. Look, look who it came from. It's like a huge, long email address. And Wells Fargo isn't going to text me like this. Oh, and a red flag for me is I'm not a Wells Fargo member. So I knew this was fraud. So I just deleted it, but after I took a screenshot, of course, for my presentations. But this is a tactic that fraudsters will do because it's a fear-based message. They'll also start to do, I'm getting more and more of these. This one says, how are you? Now, I normally don't reply because I know this is a scam. They want to have a conversation with you and extract personal information. But I knew I had a presentation coming up. So I was like, I'm going to reply because I would love a new screenshot. So I said, who dis? That's not normally how I talk, but I just wanted to separate myself. And it says, I am Anna. Do you remember me, Mr. James? I said, nope. He says, this is Anna Smith. Isn't this Mr. James's phone number? And has a picture. I mean, come on. This is real, but this is how they're trying to engage with people. And this is probably an AI generated image anyway, or a stolen image off the internet. I stopped my conversation after that, after I got a good screenshot. But we were trying to establish a rapport and a conversation. And then, of course, they're going to have some amazing investment opportunity for me, I'm sure. There's this one pretending to be the IRS. One thing to note is that IRS will only contact you via postal mail. They're not going to send law enforcement to kick down your door. They're not going to email you, or they're not going to email you. They're not going to text you. They're not going to call you. They will only postal mail. You'll get a big scary letter in the mail, but that's the only way. So this one, definitely fraud. This one, Apple support. So it's saying, oh, there's unusual activity, fear-based message. Oh no, I don't want this unusual activity. Click this handy dandy blue link. Nope, not going to do it. Took a screenshot, delete. And it was definitely fraud. And then there's this one I got on WhatsApp. I don't get a ton on WhatsApp because I used it WhatsApp that much, but I just got this the other day that as the market begins to recover, I'm going to have some cryptocurrency investments that I could be making. You guys, I don't even need to be sitting here. I'm going to be so rich from this investment that I'm going to make over here. Wrong. This is fraud. It's giving you, I didn't even look at this contact because this contact could have malware in it as well because it's an attachment. So I took a screenshot and deleted. And actually blocked and deleted them. Reported and blocked is what I did. So this is an example of, have you guys gotten text messages that were fraud, clearly fraud? I'm seeing a lot of heads nod. It's common, but this is just to show you kind of the scale of what they're willing to do. And then there's vishing and spoofing. So vishing is when they use voice. So that's going to be over the phone to scam you. And then spoofing, if you remember, if you were here in our last presentation, I showed you a website that lets you spoof people's voices. And so what we really want to make sure is that you do not provide any PII for any calls that you did not initiate. Even if you're expecting a call from your doctor and they need to verify your personal information, I still hang up and I call my doctor back and I get a hold of the receptionist or whoever I'm trying to contact. It's not very convenient.
PII is personal information.
Yes, PII, personal identifying information. Yes. You can also, for your calls, you can use a call blocking service. So you can either use it through your carrier or there's built-in features or call blocking apps. I have screenshots of those. So one is called Robocaller, Hiya. If you're using a third-party app though, just a word of warning, you have to give them access to your contacts. Usually a best practice is not to give a bunch of apps access to your contacts because then you're just widening the web of where you could be breached or your contact numbers can be breached. So if you use a third-party app, you do have to give access to your contacts, but that is a personal decision you have to make. You have to assess your risk. If you find that to be low risk because now you're going to be identified of potential spam calls, then go for it. The last one is a screenshot of my Verizon app. So Verizon has a paid version, but they also have a free call filter as well. And I actually enable the call filter, and you can set it up to low, medium, or high potential for spam, and they'll block the calls immediately. So that's kind of cool. Now, the other carriers have it too. So depending on what carrier you use, it'll be within your settings of your phone. So I would Google the directions if you're interested in that. And there's the phishing emails. This one again is the pretending to be the IRS. You want to get your refund. Ooh, this is a too good to be true. This is the other side. It's either going to be a fear-based message or a too good to be true message. This one is saying that you are, there's an error and you're going to get $419. Woo to hoo. But they need your bank account. You can see where this goes wrong real fast, doesn't it? So they want you to click on that link. So what we want you to do is do not click on any links, open attachments. You can report it to the organization. That's optional. It's really up to how much time you have. I like to do that occasionally, like to Amazon. They just have a fraud email. I just forward them to them. You don't have to, but definitely delete it. There's also one social media. This is fake. Somebody is trying to log into your account. Click here if it's not you, or use this number. Usually that's going to be a red flag. You're thinking, oh no, somebody's trying to get into my account. Let me remediate that. In reality, this is fake. This is not really Instagram. Somebody's trying to get to your account. Instead, somebody's trying to extract personal information from you. So where does AI fit into all of this? So all of those were probably generated by a human behind the scenes, depending on their skill set, a program of some sort. But what AI will do now is this will actually assist emails tailored to a preference and communication style. So if you are normally suspicious of things that say are addressed, dear sir or madam, or there's punctuation errors or things like that, and those are the things we've been taught to look out for, and you still should. Well, now AI is going to make these emails so smooth that you're going to think it's actually from the bank or actually from your I don't know, city. Why am I blanking? Wow, I probably should have more tea. That helps. But it will be more difficult to detect. So spear phishing is different than phishing. So think of phishing as casting the widest net possible, and they just need a few people to bite. Oh, IRS, we're going to send this to 1,000 people, and we just need 1% of you to fall for it. Spear phishing is going to be when the attacker sends the targeted email to a specific individual or group, and then they pose as a trusted source, like a colleague, a business partner, a bank, financial institution, or so on. So now with the AI, they're going to, really target you and know your likes and your dislikes. So now let's go back to that social media tip I said. We talked about making your profile private versus public. If somebody can easily see what you're all involved in, what you like and you dislike, because your social media profile is set to public, it's going to be so much easier to target you later because I know what you're interested in. Versus if you make your social media profile private, it makes it so much harder for them to target you. So that's phishing and the emails. But then we also, in our last training, we got into people that are vishing. So they're calling you, pretending like they're from a financial institution. But now there's this thing called deep fake audio, images, and videos. So the example that I have is two rappers, the Drake and the Weeknd. This was a few weeks ago. They released a song, but really they did not release a song. AI generated the whole thing. So it created all this controversy. Yet, in the entertainment industry, it's mostly used for entertainment purposes. But now it could be used for malicious activities. So let's say an attacker creates a video of a CEO saying something or doing something damages and uses that video to extort money. Or maybe they're pretending to be your grandchild, your kid, your significant other, someone in your social circle, pretending to be them. So more and more articles are coming out that are saying people may use people's voices for scamming them. So just be aware. Even the FTC put out a note that said scammers are using AI to enhance their family emergency schemes. So it's pretty crazy. So I'm going to actually show you how this works. So let me pull up the website and then I'll share. So this is a demo. This is a company. I'm not associated with this company. I just think they do a really good job of showing you this demo. So this is Mark Zuckerberg. He is the CEO of Meta, which has Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, and so on. So here's an example of the actual video that this company used.
This is like the key question, right? Because the thing that's different about virtual and hopefully augmented.
So that's Mark Zuckerberg's real voice, real tone, real everything. But now we want him to sound like a narrator.
This is like the key question, right? Because the thing that's different about virtual and
maybe we want him to sound like a female.
This is like the key question, right? Because the thing that's different about virtual and hopefully
and now an anime voice.
like the key question, right? Because the different.
But now think of how powerful this would be. If you're able to change people's voices like this, think about identity theft victims. You're guilty, you have to prove yourself innocent. So you're telling me, no, I mean, that's what I said, but that's not, you put in somebody else's voice. That could be pretty powerful. And here's the whole point with this is a creator that I follow on TikTok, and we're going to talk about having and establishing a family password after this.
This is the AI generation of my voice. None of this is real. Think of the implications.
So he generated his voice. That's his voice. It sounds like his voice in all his videos, but he generated that with AI. So the recommendation is to have a family password. So depending on how little, big your family is, it is super important, especially when you're traveling too, to set up a family password that says, it doesn't matter what I'm saying or what I'm doing, how frantic it might sound. This is the password that will require you to have action, family members or, whoever you're talking to. So if there, is one takeaway you get from this entire presentation, it is 100% to your action item is to make sure that you have a family password, because that is not what I wanted to share.
Paige, just to clarify, by family password, you mean like a word or a phrase?
A word or phrase. Yes. Thank you for clarifying.
Verify that this is you.
Yes. So Carolyn, if we were family and I called you and I said, I need help. I, need XYZ. This is what's happened. And you say, okay,
I need money, wire it here.
Wire
right
money.
now.
I, for tires, or I'm in jail, or, the list can go on and on. And then I say, okay. And then you say, okay, Paige, what is the password we have? And if I don't say, lambs are awesome, or,
pineapple,
or whatever the word that or phrase we've come up with, then absolute hang up, no go, could call the police. But that will save a lot of people from a lot of money that they're sending to fraudsters. And then also just my heart's elevated just from all of that. Imagine if you think it's someone within your family that's calling you. Yep. Highly recommend. Well, I'm going to also now go to the resource section since we are so close on time, and give you, first I'm going to start with the US resources and then Canada. So the Federal Trade Commission let me pause there first, is that, we have the statistic 1 in 5 older adults have been victim of a financial crime, but it would be more likely because the likelihood of anybody reporting, and then more specifically older adults reporting, is very low. There are things that, whether you're embarrassed, you think your family's going to take away your computer, your phone, certain privileges, I say driving or whatever, away from you. You don't want to alert them sometimes of bad things that have happened, but it is super important to get remediation, to report it. So it won't go away magically overnight. If you pay the $10,000 ransom, they're probably still going to keep coming after you. So it is super important that you report your issue as soon as it happens. So in the US, we have the Federal Trade Commission, and that's at identitytheft.gov. What you're going to do is you're going to fill it out, and you're going to explain the whole thing that happened in detail. And then at the end of that, you're going to get an identity theft report number. It's also super important that you save a copy of that report, because you will not be able to go back and get it should you need to send that somewhere. So it is super important that you either save or print it. You can then talk to local law enforcement. You can file a police report there. Or if it's internet-based, maybe you sent money or wired money somewhere, but it was over the internet that you got that communication. You can also contact the Internet Crime Complaint Center, and that's the FBI. They will walk you through a series of ways to report that and then help remediate that. But it is very important to first establish yourself as a victim.
Hey, this
Yeah.
goes to my issue with,
Mhm.
I don't recall now that I go back that there was any way to save it if you were unable to print it immediately at that point in time. My printer was down, so I couldn't
Yeah.
print it. And there didn't say anything on it that said to save.
So usually and depending on what software you have in your computer, you're able to save things as a PDF usually. And in my computer, I do have a Mac, but I say export as, and it says, and I have a list of ways I could export it as, and PDF is an option. In my PC, I had like a year ago, when I go to print, your option is to scroll down and there's an option to print it as a PDF. And then that saves onto your device or wherever you tell it to save. So that's something to look next time if you're going through this again, to look for that, because
Thank you.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. And then in Canada, there is the Canadian Anti-Fraud Center, that you're able to report your fraud there. Again, you're going to get a report. You'll get a report number. It is super important to oversave, write down the number, all of that, because you just never know what you might need later to make yourself, when you're trying to resolve your issue, what you might need that report number, you might need the actual report itself.
If you have more questions, by all means, just send them in to me, or if you want Paige's help, which she kindly offered on our last session with anything, or have questions, we're here to help. We want you to feel safe when you travel and just know how to do things. And all of the products that we talked about today are on there's a cybersecurity article or in our safety section on our website, and I'll follow up with anything else. But as we do with all of our events, to make sure we do a donation to a nonprofit. So thank you all for helping with that. Great.
Thank you.
Have a nice afternoon or evening or wherever you are, morning. Hope to see you next week.